please feel free to do so by raising your hands, and I would ask you to talk. Just a brief recap of the few topics we were able to cover yesterday during the class. It seems that Debayo wanted to give us a recap, so please feel free to unmute your mic and give us a brief recap.
Alright, good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Okay, yesterday we actually we learned about variables.
Yes.
How we can actually call our variables and display them in our terminals. So you give us an examples, like you give us an age. You said age is a variable that is attached to a value. Like you said, age, if age is equals to 12, so the name age is a variable.
Yes.
So if we want to get the value of 12, we have to print the name of that variable, which is age.
Yes.
So I think that's what I was able to understood very well yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other person, what you got from the class yesterday before we move to today's class? You can just unmute your mic and speak out, because we have one season 7, maybe the next, let me say 4 minutes. I should be switching to today's work, today's what we have to do today. So please, if you have anything you want to say that you learned from the former class that we had, please feel free to tell us about it. Okay. All right. So let's kick off. Let's move. Now, today's class, I'm going to start with doing a brief recap of what variables are, and all that. Then I will now move into what we have to treat today. So for today, we are supposed to look at a few topics, starting with variables, and we are also supposed to look at what is a statement, what are operators, and if we have the time, we get to ask users for input so that users can interact with the small pieces of code that we will later start writing. So to start with, I'll have to share my screen first. So let me just start with that, sharing my screen. This screen, share. All right. So I'm guessing everybody should be able to see my screen about now. So everybody should be able to see my screen. So I'm back here.
Yes, you can see your screen, sir.
On our PyCharm editor. So the first thing we are going to recap on is what a variable is. A variable is a container where you can store values, store data in any form, because data can take different forms in Python. So there are so many forms in which data can take. We are also going to look into some of them today. Is someone trying to join, or did someone leave? Okay, so let's continue. So yes, we are going to be looking into all the different forms that data can take. Well, not all of them, but some. As we go along the journey, you get to know more and more newer data types, and that you can play around with. All right. So the book we are reviewing. Let me open up the book so that we can see where we are. What page we are. We are currently at page 34. So this is where we are going to start. Somewhere, yes, variables, names, keywords. So we don't have to read all this stuff. So we're saying programmers generally choose the name for their variables that are meaningful and document what the variable is used for. So your variable name can be anything, but there are some rules that you must know before you start writing variable names. Like, for example, you don't start variable names with numbers. You cannot start a variable name with a number. That's a law in Python. It will throw a syntax error because Python will not understand. And also, special characters don't start variable names. So I'll show you an example of that right now. That's what they are trying to explain in all this big grammar you're seeing here. So an example of what I'm saying is that, watch. say this variable age, say I started with a backslash. Sorry. So let's say I put a backslash here. Python is you already see there's a red line there if you zoom in for those of you on phone. You're going to see that Python is, if I run it now, it's going to tell me something, syntax error. And you remember what I told you guys a syntax error is? It means it doesn't understand what I'm writing. So let me just accept this. So a syntax error means Python doesn't understand what I'm writing. So as you can see, when I put a forward slash in front of age, it's through a syntax error. Simply meaning you cannot start a variable with, you know, a character like backslash or, you know, a number too. If you start with a number, the same error is going to pull up. Python is going to tell me syntax error, I don't understand this, doesn't make sense, shouldn't be here. So those are some laws of when you're naming variables. And there are also some things we should avoid when naming variables, like you cannot use some inbuilt functions in Python have names, and you cannot use those names to name a variable. For example, I cannot name a variable print because print is already a function in Python, an operator in Python. So I cannot name a variable print because it will not work. I cannot say someone's trying to join the meeting, sorry. So I can't use custom inbuilt keywords to name my variables too, because Python already understands that those things mean something else. So you shouldn't be using them when you are referring to your variables or you're trying to store data. You don't use those keywords that are custom built into Python. I'll get to show you some of them as we proceed in the class, so you start familiarizing yourself with it. So now, is our book. So you can see what they said here. I've shown you what it means. When you use a number to start a variable, it throws a syntax error or a special character. It will also throw a syntax error. Now, like I was telling you about the keywords to avoid. So there are some things you cannot use when you are trying to name a variable, like and, as, assert, break, because all these things, they have functions that they already perform in Python. So all these things here, which I highlight them, they already have functions that they perform in Python, and Python will not allow you to use them when you are naming or creating a variable. So just like print, you cannot use print to name a variable and all these things. So these are keywords, special keywords that Python understands as, you know, they are special to Python. So you don't just use them anyhow, they are not for you. So yeah, we'll get to use all these things later, the and, the if, the else, the pass, raise, return. You'll learn what they all mean in the coming classes and how to use them. So moving forward, we are going to now look at statements. What is a statement? It says a statement is a unit of code that the Python interpreter can execute and understand. So let me just go back to my IDE environment here. And so one thing I would like you guys to take note of is that before now, we've been writing statements. All these things are statements. Anything Python can understand is a statement. So Python understands that this statement here is a statement that is performing a task of, say, assignment. So assign 1200 to age is a statement that Python understands. So Python will run it and then move to the next line, look for the next statement to run. The next statement here says this variable, say, assign hello world to it. Now Python understands it, it's okay. It moves to the next line, look for the next statement. So that's how Python runs. Python runs line by line. So that all these are statements. They are basically, that's as straightforward as it can be. A statement is a line of code that the Python interpreter can understand. So for those of us using our laptops and using our phones, we will soon start getting to the point where you guys will have to start actively writing all these things out and testing them by yourself. It's also good that you can even start doing it now, because there's nobody stopping you. If you're with your laptop and you're in this meeting, you can do a split screen and be trying some of these things out, so you start getting used to them. Even though we have not started writing code and writing syntax and testing our code out, it's good that as I'm even writing it here, you should testing it out, as ideas come to your mind. Try and write it down on your own side and see if it actually works for you. So yeah, so that's actually basically what a statement is. It's simply a line of code that can be interpreted and executed by Python. So that's as simple as it is. The next thing we need to cover, let me just go back to the book because that's what we are following. So I've explained what statement is. So we now need to start looking at how to pull them together: variables, expressions, statement, and all. So I'm going to start showing you guys what an expression is, what some operators are, and how to use them. So that's our next line of this thing: operators and expressions. So now you might be asking, so what is an expression? For those of us that went to, or not even everybody, did like elementary mathematics, you guys must have done all those algebra, board mass, all those small mathematics. And then for our higher, both of us that are doing some BSc masters, we will know those like regular expressions and all those massive looking differential equations, all those things, they are expressions. So um the thing about Python is that since it is a high level language, expressions in Python are almost basically the same thing. They don't change. So if say I want to perform an operation now, say multiplication, all I need to do now is I can actually just type in an expression that says let me see. So now this is where you need to start pulling everything together. So remember that to do anything you need data, and to use any data you must store it somewhere before you can retrieve it, because that's the way everything literally works. Before you can use any form of data you must have stored it somewhere. Then anytime you need it, you go there and you take it out and then you use it. So now what we are going to do is I am going to delete all this. I'll leave my age, I'll just reduce it to like 12, and then I'll create a new variable called let me call it let me see, what will I call it now? Let me accept someone into the class. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new variable. Let me call it time. I don't know, I'm not good at coming up with names. And let me equate it to 5. All right, so now we have two variables and we want to create an expression. Like we want to perform an operation, and to perform an operation we need to create an expression to do it. So how do we go about that? I can say print, because we definitely want to see it come out in our output in our console. So because this is the console here where we see all our output. I can say print name, print age, right? I'll let that guy in a few minutes, plus time, and we should see the answer right about now, 17. So let me just accept this guy into the meeting. All right, so now from what we can see here, I said print age plus time and it printed out 17, which is the correct answer. So we just performed an operation of addition, an addition operation, and it gave us our output as our answer easily, no stress. Someone trying to join? Okay. Oh, you can't see my screen. Sorry, what happened? My entire screen. Something must have happened. Sorry, I didn't. Please, where did you guys stop seeing my screen at? What was I saying when you stopped seeing my screen, so I can recap?
Yes, when you went offline.
I went offline. Wow.
You went offline, yeah.
I'm so sorry. So no one even said anything. So what was the last thing I said before I went offline, please?
You're actually talking about computers.
Okay. All right. So yes, operators. I was saying that we have operators. Python has a lot of operators. Operators in, like, we have things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I'll still treat all that, but I was showing you guys an example of what an expression is. So um so I was trying to use these variables to create an expression. So I can actually just do this. I can say h here, h times, here's my times time. So but now the problem with this, now there's an issue here. I'm not storing it anywhere. So even if Python does it, there is no way to retrieve that data after it has performed this operation here. Now there is no way to retrieve it. If I run it, two things might happen: either it throws an error, or it runs and nothing exactly, it runs but nothing happens. So to have access to this, to the output of this operation, now I need to store it somewhere. I need to store it inside a variable. So what I can now do, I can now say a new variable called result, maybe result. I can now equate it to h times time. So now if I want to now get the answer, I can now say print, and I put result here. So now we all know what's going to happen. It's going to print out the answer, which is 60. So this is an operation we just performed. We perform multiplication here. Initially it was addition, but I changed it to multiplication just to show you guys that Python allows you to perform different operations and all. So we are going to be going in depth into all the operators that you can use in Python now. Let me just accept this person into the class. So now we are going to start treating all the different operators you can use. At least all the very common ones that I always use, all the time. So let's start. I'll be using this age and time as my two main guys to run all the operators I'll be running here for you. So now let's start with addition. So we already know what addition will do. So if I say, let me just put everything in a single statement so that it's easy and it's fast. If I say age plus time, we know the answer. It will print out the addition, add the two of them. That's the addition operator. Now we can do multiplication, age times, where's the multiplication? Age times time, it will give us the answer. We can also do raised to power. So when you want to do raised to power in Python, all you need to do is just do times twice. So this is age raised to power time. That's what it means. So if we run it, it should give us, that's 12 raised to power 5, about 24,832. So there's also the division operator, age over time. So let me divide it. Age divided by time, it will give us 2.4. Now there are special operators. There are two special operators that we'll look into. One is the modulo, and the other one is this is the name of the other one, modulo, and this, let me just go to the material. I think I've skipped, the name has left my head, but I still remember what it does. Modulo, where is it? We've done plus, we've done all these ones. Modulus, yes, and quotient, yes. Sorry, so that's modulus and quotient. So modulus and quotient. So the modulus operator is basically just two division signs, and what the result is the remainder. So what this operator does, it will divide age by time, and then how many times can 5 divide 12? The answer is the first time, second time. Remainder is what? 1, 2, sorry, right? 5, that's 10, remainder 2. Exactly. So that's why you can see it's showing us 2 here as the answer. So the modulo operator will return the remainder of the operation that you are carrying out. So the other one is the quotient. Quotient is basically a percentage sign, and if you run the code, it still returns 2. Okay, this operation will let me make this time 4, so that we can have a more let me see, 4. Let me make it let me make it something that will go once, 10. That's okay. So okay. Sorry, I made a mistake. This the quotient. What the quotient will return is the remainder. So what the modulo returns is, let me check it to be sure. I don't I forget to. So what the modulo will return is how many times it will go. So for example, how many times can 10 divide 12 is just once. So it will go since 10 can only divide 12 once, that's why we are seeing 1 as our answer. So 10 can only go into 12 one time and the remainder is 2, but it throws away the remainder and gives us the the division like once. It can only divide once. Now if we go to the other one, which is the quotient will return the remainder for us. So if 10 divides 12, what will be remaining? 2 is going to be remaining. So that's why we have 2 here. So these one they are special operators that you use at some point, but they are not very commonly used, but you use them when you are performing some very complex tasks. You use these operators very well. So which other operator have we not treated? So there are also other forms of operators. So there is, you can combine two operators together. There's the greater than. Okay, yeah, we didn't look at greater than and less than. So Python also has greater than and less than. So if I try to print age less than time, it should either print out true or false. Okay, yes, false. So now this is um age greater than time less than. So this is saying that time is greater than age because is the way I wrote it. It's saying that age is less than time. And is age less than time? The answer is no. Age is 12, time is 10, age is greater. So the answer here is false. Now if we do the other one, which is this one, age is greater than time, correct. So it will print out true. So we know that age is greater than time. What else? Which other operator do we have? Okay, we also have not. So you can actually combine them together. So let me say equal to. You can do equal to and greater than. Age equal, but this one we cannot use it in this particular context. So you cannot use it in this particular. Use it when you are comparing two things. So you want to now say, because we are just using print, it will not, the Python will be like you're writing the wrong thing. So I cannot use this particular operator in this context. But we have in Python, we have operators like this. We have equal to and greater than, or in general, in programming in general, self is greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. We have not equal to, and we have this thing means not, so not greater, not less than. We have not greater than. What else? And then we have the last one, two equal signs, equals. So this one is when you say we'll still get to see all these things. What this means is you're basically saying, you're asking Python, is age equal to time? I think we can try this one safe. We can try it. Okay, so equal. It should not throw an error for us. Let me just remove all this. So if we run it now, the answer will be false, because this is saying is asking is age equal to time, but it is not, so it will print out false. So don't worry, we're going to start using all these things later. I'm just trying to show you so you have them on the fly of your head that these things exist. Yeah, so that when you see them eventually, you'll not be like, where is this coming from? What is this? So you just need to know that you can combine operators together, especially the greater than and the less than. Whenever you want to compare two values or two variables, whenever you want to compare two things, you can combine operators together to do that. And just have that in mind. So up until now, we've talked about variables, operators, statements. What is a statement in Python? Basically any line of code that Python understands. Variables, statements, operators, and we've looked at all the different operators that we have. We've looked at addition, subtraction, multiplication. We looked at the modulo and the what's it called? The other one. I keep forgetting the name. And the is it exponent. Let me check the name again, please. This is my book here. Quotient, yeah. modulo and the quotient. Okay, so now we are going to now, the next thing we need to understand, because all these are just basic stuff that we need to understand before we can actually start writing proper code, is the hierarchy. How does Python interpret expressions when you write them? So now you saw all these signs that we just saw: multiplication, addition, raised to power, how to do all those things. Python has a way of, there's a hierarchy. Which one should I do first? Which one should I do last? Which one should I do second? So if we all remember BODMAS, bracket of multiplication, division, addition and subtraction, that is actually the same law that Python follows. Bracket comes first. So in Python, anything inside the bracket will run first. After that, the next thing that will run is, if there is a raised to power sign, that is the next highest thing that will happen. So raised to power. After raised to power, you have sorry. After raised to power, you have the normal multiplication. Then under it, you have division. Then you have addition and subtraction. So where is my addition? Addition and subtraction. So this is basically the hierarchy. So bracket always comes first. So let me just add brackets. So this is the hierarchy. Bracket comes first. Multiplication, raised to power, like whenever you want to do like 3 raised to power 5, then multiplication, division, addition and subtraction comes last. So that's the way Python runs its stuff. So you just need to know, so that whenever you are performing an operation, you don't just write it anyhow and expect Python to give you the correct answer, because what will happen is Python will run it the way it knows it should run it, and then you get the wrong answer and then you'll be confused. So yeah, there's a hierarchy of how the operators are run in Python. So knowing all this now, the next thing we should now start looking at is we have to start writing some basic small basic codes on using all these operators. So to start, let me just write a bit of, to show you the hierarchy thing I'm talking about. Write a bit of code. After this, we'll ask questions. Anyway you don't understand, I'll just go over it, and we'll now move on to the next side of the class. So this is like a halfway through the class thing. So let me just show you some examples of what I'm talking about. So let me say I want to print, let me just do something now. 3 times 5 plus 4 plus 4, then minus 1. All right. So how this is going to run is that Python will first do 3 times 5, right? Then add 4 to it, then minus 1 from it. So if we run it, we should get in 3 times 5 is 15 plus 4, that's 16, 17, 18, 19 minus 1. That should take us back to 18. So the answer should be 18, correct? So let's now switch it up a bit. Remember that I told you that raised to power always comes first. So let's do that now. Let me make this 2 so it's a bit more straightforward. 2 raised to power 3. That's 2 times 2, 4, 4 times 2, 8. So alright. So now what's going to happen is Python will first do this. It will first do 2 raised to power 3, which is 8. Then to do 3 times 5, which is 15, add it to 8 and minus 1 from it. So that's 15, 8 plus 15. So that's, divide 8 into 2, that's 4, 4, 15, that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 minus 1, that should be 22. So if we run it now, if we check our answer exactly. So did you see what happened? Normally, someone would think that Python will run this starting from here and run it down to 1, but no, that didn't happen. What it did first, it did this one first, because there's a hierarchy. 2 times 3, 2 raised to power 3 first, then 3 times 5, then do the addition, then did the subtraction last. Alright? So yeah, that is how we run this kind of, that's how we use operators in Python. And that's also how we have, so we've talked about variables, operators, statements, what else? And yeah, So please, if you have any questions of the things we've talked about, or if there's anything that is not so clear, please help us and unmute your mic and signify so that we can touch on it before we move to the next half of the class and round up for the day. So is there anything that anybody doesn't understand, or anything you don't grasp, or anything you want clarification on, or so that we can kill it now before we move? Okay, so I guess everybody is fine. Okay, all right. Why am I seeing an option? Okay, Begzela, please, you can speak.
Oh, sorry, I'm following nice and neat. I just want to, I think I've understood this raising of power, but I just wanted to comment that the stuff in the brackets there that is being printed is obviously not being stored, right?
Yes, obviously, yeah, it's not being stored, it's just being outputted directly to the console. Exactly. That's a very nice.
It's just being displayed.
Yes, it's just being displayed. That's a nice observation to make.
Alright.
Alright. Any more observations or additions to the class or anything? Alright. So we should move. Okay. Please, you can feel free to stop me anytime I'm going too fast or anything I'm saying you don't get. Just say I don't understand, or I'm not following, or you just lost me there, or anything, and I would come back. All right. So where's that book? Keep missing it. All right. So we've looked at all this. We've looked at. So the next thing we need to look at string operations. So all the operations we've done so far, we are on numbers like 5, 10, 15, 20, and all. So now we're going to look at how to do those things on letters and alphabets, which is a string. And I'll explain a concept called concatenation, and we'll move on from there. And after that, we will be able to ask user for input, and we fly. From there we fly. So yeah, let us look at string operations now. So let's go back to my IDE. Now, who remembers what a string is? What I said a string is? Anybody, please? What did I remember in the last class I said something about what a string is, what a integer is, and all that. So who remembers what those things are? So the question is basically, what is a string in Python? How does Python know something is a string?
That should be when there is a quotation mark.
Exactly. So anything inside a double quote or a single quote automatically becomes a string. So let us create new variables now. I'm going to create a variable called name, and inside that variable I'm going to store a string, and my name is Richie, so I'll just store Richie, and I'm going to create another variable called city. So let me say my city is currently Lagos. All right, now we're going to start playing with these strings. Normally we played with numbers. We could add them, multiply them, divide them, perform modulo on them. What about strings and letters? How flexible is Python, allowing us to manipulate alphabets, strings, which is a bunch of alphabets? Someone's trying to join the meeting. Okay, no one is trying to join the meeting. All right, so now let's get into that. So most of the operations you can perform on a number, at least a few of them, you can perform them on a string, except for division and subtraction. I think you can multiply and add, but you cannot divide. So Well, let's even try it. Let's see if we can divide. I've never really tried dividing a string, but let me try it now. Let me print. Let me say. Okay, let me just print it out without storing it anyway. So let me just print name. All right, name divided by 2. See if that works. All right. As you can see, it didn't work. Someone trying to join. Yeah, someone's trying to join. Oko Samson. Welcome, Samson. Welcome. All right. So yeah, we just tried to divide a string, and guess what happened? What the Python said: type error, unsupported operand for division, string and int. So what is it? What is this error saying? This error is saying you cannot divide a string by an integer. It doesn't make sense. It's like saying, let me give you an example. Okay, yes, this is the example here. The example is like you cannot charge an iPhone with an Android charger. It doesn't work because there are two different types of charger. So a string and an integer are two different types of data. So you cannot divide them. You cannot use an integer to divide a string. Division doesn't work, obviously. So let's try and see if we can minus. So can we minus 2 from it? Obviously, definitely we can't. It will not work. The same error, unsupported operand. So minusing cannot work because a string and an integer, their values are not the same. You cannot minus them. But now let's try addition. Let's try addition. So can we add an integer to a string? And what does Python say? No, you can't. You can't add an integer to a string. Alright, what else is yet? Well, the only thing left to do is multiply. So when we multiply, guess what happens? Multiplication works because the thing about multiplication is a very special mathematical function in the real sense, because it has is special. That's what I'll just say. I'll still find a way to explain it later, exactly what multiplication is in its rawest, purest form. But for now, it's still, my mind has not really cracked it so much. But just know that you can multiply a string by an integer. Because, in fact, yes, multiplication is in a way an instruction saying, make this thing appear twice. We said print name times 2. So this times 2 is saying twice, kind of. So anything I write inside here, if I write 2 times 2, we are saying 2 times. If I write 4 times 2, 4 2 times. So the multiplication operation is a special one. So we can actually say name times 2, and what will happen is it will print name twice for us. So yeah, that works. Name, it will print it name 2 times. So this is one of the things you can do. So you can actually multiply a string into many places and it will work. Another thing you can do is that you can add 2 strings together. So I can say print name plus city. Now what will happen is, what are you expecting to see? Richie, Lagos. So already you know. Now, but if you look at the way it came out here, so what we just did, this thing now we just did is called concatenation. Let me spell it. I hope I get the spelling. Right? Concatenation. Alright. This is the correct spelling. Python doesn't know what this is, sha. So yeah, it's called concatenation, which means basically adding 2 strings together. So whenever you add 2 strings together, you have concatenated it. But if you look at my result down here, it is together, like there's no spacing. What if I wanted to add a space? All I need to do is I can just do this. I can just say, in fact, I can come here in this Lagos and add a space. So this space is actually a character. In fact, space in itself is, how do I put it? Okay, wait, give me 1 second. So for Python to know that there's a space here, Python has to assign a character to it. I mean, you cannot see it, but in the digital form, there is actually something here that you cannot see, but it's there. Because if there's nothing here, Python will not be able to understand what I just did here, which is a space that I gave. So even space has a character assigned to it in zeros and ones. That's why Python knows what it is. So when I add it here, it becomes part of this string. So this is not more just Lagos. This is actually space Lagos. So when I now run my code, guess what happens? When I add name and city together, it adds it with the space I left in front of Lagos. And you have Richie Lagos. You get? Okay, let me also show you another way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to say name plus, we add a space, right? Let me add a space here now, and I'll now do again plus city. So to show you that this space actually has a value that you cannot see, if I run it, the same result. You see the same result, Richie Lagos. Remember, I have removed the space up here and I put it down inside this place. So now you know that you can concatenate strings. You can do this. So there's also something. There's also another. Should I typecasting? Typecasting. Is it time for us to start doing typecasting? Okay, no, not yet. Typecasting is more. Will come down later. So yeah, this is just one of the things you can do on a string. You can actually also split a string, but we'll look at all those things later as we go. They are called methods. I'll still introduce you to methods and how to use them. But for now, this is a very simple method you can use on a string. You can just concatenate two strings together and get your answer as the result. So yeah, this is something you can do. The next thing we now want to start doing, since we are following a book, is taking input from your user. So we are going to ask our user for input, and we are going to print that input out. So as at this point, you will now start learning how to make interactive systems, just like a password checker, something that sends an email to any email you type in there, a currency converter, a weight checker, all those kind of stuff. This is actually the introduction to learning how to build those things, because every system needs an input in a form. In fact, to solve any problem, you need an input. You need a form of taking data from the environment, and then with that data you solve a problem, or you perform an operation of some sort, and you give out an output. So now, I think after this class, I will urge everybody to try some of these things out themselves to see how it works and come up with ideas on things you can do with inputs of projects you want to do where you're required to take in input, so that we can I would even love it if we can get a list of projects, so that towards the end of the program we can now, or during the weekend, because by this weekend you will have a project. So everybody, you can just give us a list of things you would like to build, simple things, and we'll see how check out the ones that are possible, and work it out as projects for different groups, because we divide us into groups for those of us that are seriously attending the classes. All right, so now you want to take inputs from whoever is going to use your code, or whoever is going to test or run test your code to see if it's working. How do we do it? What if I told you that this name, instead of making it stagnant, like manually imputed, I can actually make it such a way that whoever is going to use this code will impute their details, and it will print it out for them. So let me show you something nice now. So to take inputs from user, all you need to do is you say in. So you see the thing about an IDE. So it brought out suggestions for me, and I want to use this. This is what I want. I want to use input. So now input, all right, and I can type in something here. Say please. It has to be a string. Please enter your name. All right. Please enter your name, and I'll give. All right. I'll just, so that person knows I'm asking them for their name, and then I'll change this one here to input. I'll just change it to input, and I'll say please enter your city. And yeah, now what do I want to print name plus city. So if I run this code now, the result is going to be something very nice. So watch. You see, look at the console down here. It says please enter your name, and I type Richie, and I press enter. Please enter your city, and I say Lagos, and Richie Lagos. You see, so yeah, this is a simple code we just wrote now. So in this code we did a few things. If you notice, this Python ran these things line by line. It didn't bring out the two of them at the same time, because that's how Python runs code, line by line. So it first read the first statement that says enter your name. When I executed it, it ran the second statement, enter your city. And then when I hit enter to execute, it ran the last statement, which was to print my name plus my city. So now let's play with this a bit. So we're going to do something to this end result to make it a bit more dynamic. So look what we are going to do. We are going to use we just learned how to concatenate strings. So that's what we are going to do now. So we're going to create a string that says your name is, your name is what, then I'll write what here, name, right? And then I'll do I'll give a space. Let me just do space plus space, and you are from, guess what, I'll need to give a space here, and I'll just write city. So plus, where is that plus? City. Okay, so if I run this now and it asks me to enter my name, I can actually enter anything like Hertz, and enter my city, Kumbolo. I don't know where that is, Kumbolo, and boom, your name is Hertz and you are from Kumbolo. So already you can start playing with this type of stuff, and make your input, make your code dynamic. So now your code will respond differently with respect to different inputs. So when we start treating things like if conditions, you can now say if name equals this, do this. So if I now say my name is Richmond, my code can now check if name is Richmond, perform an action for only Richmond alone. Else, if name is not Richmond, perform another action. Things like that will start coming up once you're able to take input. So this is our first step into our really starting to write our own program. So from here, I would like you guys to start trying out this code yourself during the class or after class, whichever one suits you better. But during the class will actually make more sense, because in case you run into an error, I'll be able to see that error and tell you where you made a mistake, because you guys need to start making syntax errors. Get used to writing good syntax. Alright, so yes, the class should have come to an end by now, because it's already 7:52, so we should take questions and all. So what I'm going to do now is I will do a brief recap of everything we just treated this evening. After the recap, you can ask your questions. If you have any concerns of how the class is going or suggestions, please you can always openly tell us, and we'll make those changes, because we cannot be too perfect. It can never be so perfect. So please don't feel like we are making us like we don't know what we are doing. That's not what we feel. We are very open to your concerns and suggestions and all. We'll look at them and analyze it. Someone suggested that I made this a live stream on YouTube, but if I made it a live stream, you guys will not be able to actively reply and comment. You can only type. So please, yeah, I'll do a recap now, and then the Q&A is open. And also, we wanted to have a small discussion with a few people. If you are interested after the class, just to get to know ourselves a bit more better, what we do, and background information about each other, so we can start relating with ourselves properly. All right, so recap. The first things we did today were variables. We talked about what a variable is. I told you it's a container to store data in any form. After we talked of how variables store data, we said there are a lot of forms of data, but for now we are working with two main data types, which are integers and strings. An integer is just a number. A string is just a bunch of letters inside a double quote or a single quote. Then we talked about operations and statements. We said, what is a statement? We said a statement is a line of code that Python understands and can interpret and can run. Basically, that's a statement. Then an operation. What's an operation? An operation is like an action you are carrying out with different forms of data like multiplication, addition, subtraction. Those are operations. You get. We showed you a bunch of them. We showed you how to do the addition, multiplication, the greater than and less than, greater than or equal to. I told you about being able to compare to, use two different operators at the same time whenever you are trying to do a comparison. So those are operators. You already know them. We said there are special operators like the modulo, and the other one that I keep forgetting is on the PDF that we'll share in this evening, in class, after the class. So I'll share a PDF summarizing all this. What else will you talk about? Operators, lines of code. Yeah, hierarchy of operation. We told you that the raised to power or the exponential comes first, then you have your your bracket comes first, then you have your exponential, then you have your basically board mass, bracket of division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So that's the way it follows. What else? Yeah, then we looked at inputs, we looked at concatenation, how to add two strings together to make a sentence or to make your output a bit dynamic. Then we looked at taking inputs from our users, and it's as simple as just writing the word input, and you can take your inputs from your user and do your output. So yes, the floor now is open for Q&A, concerns, things you want to add to the class. If you think there are some things we should involve or should add, let us know. And yeah, today's class was a bit fast. Thank you for joining. Please endeavor to write code on your own when you are not in class, or if you cannot write it out when you're outside class, please make sure you're writing code in class. Like all these things I'm writing, make sure you're writing them too, so it will be easier for you to grab faster, because for some of us this is the only time we have to practice it. So all right, yeah, floor is now open. Anybody can feel free to, yes.
Hello.
Hello.
So I don't know, it's like a traditional kind of question, but let me just say in Python, so you don't have to like declare anything, just need variable and just put the operator there.
Yes, I'm thinking you are from you come from a JavaScript background. Are you a JavaScript person?
Yes.
Exactly. So that's why.
Yes.
I know that in other programming languages like C++ and JavaScript, you have to first declare a variable's data type, like say this is an integer, this is a string, before you can use it. But in Python does that automatically. So whenever you create a variable and you assign a value to it, Python will look at the value, and then it will know what data type to assign to that variable. So that's the way Python works. It's just
And
okay.
again, when in JavaScript, I can, let's say, if I use payout to declare variable, but I can see like declare it again.
Yes.
But if I use const, that means const I can only use it once.
Yes.
So how can I relate that with Python? Like, can I declare a variable twice or twice?
So in Python, if you redeclare a variable, what you're basically doing, you're updating it. So it's the same thing. So if I say, for example, my screen is still sharing, right? So now, let me give you an example. Let me comment out all these things. So let me give you an example. Let me say I come here and I say age is equal to 15. All right? And I now come here and say age again is equal to 16. Now, if I say print age, who can guess what it will print? Who can guess? It will print 16, because Python runs line by line. So age is 16. Everybody was like, oh sure,
Yeah.
yeah, age is 16. But I come here and
Then
say
if you answer the last
it will
line,
answer the last one exactly. So if you redeclare a variable, it will update it. If I come here and say age, if I now say if I do this age is 16 and I put it inside, if I make it a string, hmm, let me now say print type. Let me just make it. Let me say print type here. So to print what type of data is this. So basically this type means what type of data is age. Now if I run it, it will print out string. Even though I came up here and initially here age is an integer which is normal 15, here is a string. So this is updating the basically updating the variable. That's whenever you redeclare a variable, you are updating it in Python. All right.
I'm sorry. I think what is actually happening here is that just like in JavaScript,
Mhm.
JavaScript is to read code from top to bottom.
Yes.
So I think that's what Python is trying to do here.
Yes. So most, in fact, I don't think there's any language that reads code in any other way. I think there's a language that reads from left to right. I think that's C++. I think, yeah. I think C++ reads. Oh, sorry, this is my editing screen. I think C++ reads from left to right. But I'm not. I will probably do some more research on that and find out. But I think yeah, I was reading a book that said it. So, any more questions? Please let us so that or things you want to talk about because it's really